Okay, great. So there's so many things happening in the industry, and Tracking Board really does a good job at filtering in what's happening now, what's selling, who's buying. Just kind of show of hands, like who knows what Tracking Board is? Okay, a few. Okay, cool, awesome. By the way, who if you're not familiar with Zoom, this is a chat box right here, which I'm sure you saw some people already typing in. So if you have to type anything, you can type it into here. Once Jorge comes on, I'll introduce him, and then he'll talk briefly about himself and what Tracking Board is. They have a contest, which is amazing. That's helped like hundreds of people get signed. But Tracking Board is so much more than the contest. If you just literally just go to their website, it's just an ongoing thread of everything that's happening in the industry. And they work so hard on just making sure that everything is current and up to date, which is no easy task. And when we, with Top Tier, what we do is we have the writers create 50 companies that they want to get their stuff to. And they have 2 marketing calls with us, and we go through the list and see, and we send out the scripts to these companies. IMDb is a great way to look up companies, but Tracking Board is a great way to look up companies because you could actually see which managers rep which writers, which genres, which is really important. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So let me see if he's on yet. Does anybody have any questions about Zoom? I know most of you know how to use it. So, okay, cool. Let me see if he's on yet. And then we'll jump right in.
He just emailed you saying, hey, Joey, do I need a different link to get on?
Okay, I'll send him it again. Thank you, Manny. Okay, let me see. So we do this. And cool. So how it's going to work is this. After Jorge talks a little bit about himself and a little more what Tracking Board is, he'll talk about 20 to 25 minutes, and then it'll go into questions. So you don't necessarily have to ask questions just about Tracking Board. You could ask questions about what's selling now, which companies are active right now. There's so many companies out there, but which companies actually matter, I guess. Which companies are buying, which managers are just looking for clients. It's kind of like more of like a marketplace overview. So cool. I think he just came on. Hey, Jorge. Let me do it this way so I don't see so many faces. When I mute you. Okay, you already did. And I'll have you start your video.
Hey, Joey, how are you?
Hey, Jorge, how are you? Can you hear me?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
I'm good.
I can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Cool.
Awesome.
Hey, so this is Jorge Gonzalez with the Tracking Board. I was just giving a little introduction about you and Tracking Board, but tell us a little bit more about you, and then we'll go into the amazing world of Tracking Board.
Awesome. Well, first, thanks everybody for spending some time with Joey and myself this evening. So the Tracking Board and myself, let's see, well, I've been at the Tracking Board for about 2 years. Originally, my sort of foray into the entertainment industry, I started out as a writer, which I believe that many of you here tonight are pursuing the same path. And everybody has a script. And so at the time when I first moved out here, I moved out here with a couple of really good friends of mine who also wanted to get into the entertainment industry as well. And so we wrote a script, and we realized very quickly everybody had a script. So what we decided to do was to shoot our own pilot ourselves. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, so we took out a loan for 20, which to a couple of early 20-somethings was a little nutty. And we shot the pilot ourselves. And we were fortunate enough that when we put this out, this was like 2007, that it caught the attention of someone at a pretty well-respected management company. And we were fortunate enough to find ourselves with representation. And from there, we kept working on our feature material, and we had a couple of specs that went out. We met with all the studio-based production companies. Unfortunately, nothing ever, we never sold a spec, but it was a really great experience. We did get hired to write a couple of web series. We did a couple for Nickelodeon, none of which were produced, but that was sort of our initial foray into the entertainment industry. And then from there, while I was doing that, I was also working in banking, and then I went on to start working for a production company. And I loved it. That was great. I worked specifically on the development side. I worked very closely with a few literary mentors that we had in the company, as well as the production executives. And it was a really great experience. And, having been out as a writer and then sort of going to the other side, more so like as you could say, a buyer, sort of understand both worlds was a really sort of eye-opening experience for me. After doing that for a few years, I here at the tracking board, a colleague of mine is someone I've known for a number of years, and he always used to joke. He's like, "I'm gonna make you come work for me one day. I'm gonna find a way." And just the timing really worked out, and so now I've been here for 2 years, and it's been a great experience, really fulfilling experience. We work very closely with writers through our Launchpad competitions. We have the tracking board, which is a entertainment news site that is the premier source of tracking the spec script market. But we also have this amazing component, which is the Launchpad competitions, and we're now entering our fourth season of competitions. And we've already helped over 160 writers get signed, over 50 projects get set up. So it's been over 20 writers are now staffed on TV shows. So it's been a really fun experience. And having worked as a writer, having worked as a creative executive, it's really cool to sort of bring that experience and those different perspectives here to the tracking board. And it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. So tell us more about what tracking board actually is, the different elements. You talked about the contest, and in terms of like the main tracking board, what is that about?
So the tracking board, first and foremost, it's an entertainment news site. So it's very similar to some of the other trades that you find out there. Your Deadline Hollywoods, your Varieties, your Hollywood Reporters. The main difference being is that no one else out there tracks the spec script market. What the spec market is, many of you already know, but when you write a spec, you're writing it on speculation. There's no guarantee that project is going to sell or become something, but you are writing it on spec. And every year it fluctuates, but there's between 300 and 450 specs that hit this that hit the market. And when we say hit the market, what we mean is this is an agent or a manager, and they are taking this project out to the town. So they are bringing it out to producers, they're bringing studios, and for writers and for executives, it's very valuable information. For a writer, what it really does is it allows you to sort of gauge, you really have your thumb on the pulse of what is moving the needle in Hollywood. So for example, and we'll go into some more detail later. I love to share my screen and sort of click on a few examples for you guys so that you can specifically see. But let's say, a production company, a management company, let's say Circle of Confusion. Let's say they have a client who writes a sci-fi action spec script. And managers, what they're doing right now is they are calling producers, usually first producers that have deals with studios. And they're saying, hey, I have this amazing sci-fi action spec. I think you guys should read it. You're going to love it. And they say, okay, that's great. I love it. If a producer reads that spec and they like it, they'll say, hey, they'll call up the manager and they'll say, hey, I love this. I want to take it to, and they'll name a studio. They'll say Sony, Fox. And so now they are the producer on record who is bringing that project into the studio, meaning that if the manager gives permission to another producer to take that project somewhere, it's not going to be to that same studio. It's a really sort of fascinating sort of dynamic atmosphere. And what's really cool is it moves so fast. If there's a hot spec that hits the market, and within a couple of hours, you're going to see, and this is one of the things that we do very well, because we specifically are in conversations when an agent or a manager is going to go out with a spec. They understand the sort of the power and the reach of a site like the Tracking Board, specifically, who tracks the market, because they know. In my previous job, when I worked at the production company, part of my job was just to stay glued to this site, and I had to, anytime I saw a spec was going out, it was my job to call up that rep and say, hey, I need to read this thing now. I would read it, and if it was something like a really special piece of material, I would tell my boss, I'd say, this is great, like, we should make a play for it. And then he moved like that. And it's one of those things where it moves at the speed of light. It can go really, really fast. And so by us tracking the spec market, you can actually see, as updates are happening, as producers are being given territories, and that's what they'll call a studio, for example. They'll say a territory is being assigned to producer X, and this territory is being assigned to producer Y. Those are things that we track. Now, as writers, the real value here is you get a great look into what is getting studios excited, right? So, and furthermore, you can actually start to see trends of what specific production companies and what specific studios are getting really excited about. So you'll look at maybe Sony Screen Gems, right? You'll say, Screen Gems, man, they've taken these contained action thriller scripts, like, these are the ones that they've jumped on and that they've tried to set up at studios. And so as a writer, you start to create this sort of knowledge of, okay, if I write an action thriller spec, who are the people out there that this is going to really sort of spark to? And that's a huge, huge asset. Not to mention, you can also see what's not working. If you see a number of specs hit the market in a specific genre, then you know, okay, well, look, maybe there's no appetite for this in the marketplace right now. And that, ultimately, look, that should never discourage you, right? You always need to write the story that's true and that's in you, because you could be the person that writes that amazing, fantasy comedy that has maybe been a really tough sell, but maybe you're the one to sort of break through and find that one. And who knows, maybe you'll be the person to start the next trend. That said, I think it is really important to be able to sort of look and see, assess the landscape, and then make a really sort of informed decision for yourself on, hey, I've got a couple of ideas in the pipeline, like, which is the one that I should maybe move forward with. And as a writer, I think that's a huge asset, versus otherwise you're just sort of maybe, aiming in the dark and you don't actually see what the target is. So it's very helpful in that sense.
Amazing. I know this probably will be a question later on, but since you were talking about it, what, in your experience and with selling now, what genres are really popular right now? Genres and subgenres.
Oh man. So last year, I believe the most popular sort of genre was a thriller genre, and that is sort of paired with something else, right? You can have an action thriller or a sort of horror thriller, right? But that thriller component was something that really moved the market last year. I think, man, I want to say, no, wait, hold on. Maybe I have some stats. Let me see if I can put up. Okay, to put in perspective, so last year about 375 spec scripts hit the market. Of those 305, over 150 had were part of the thriller genre, right? Again, it could have been paired with something. That's a huge percentage of that, and of those, 56 of those 150 some odd thriller projects that went out got set up. So you can obviously see that last is a really big trend there. Another big one that we've seen for a while is sci-fi. Sci-fi is another one where, and the sort of level of sci-fi varies, right? There's some that are sort of, a more sort of subtle sci-fi element to it, and then there's of course others that are just full-blown, sci-fi space operas. But it seemed that it was the sci-fi prep were very sort of smart and subtle, and also it looks like writers who are creating worlds seemed like that was very interesting, but a world that you can still sort of contain in a way that it's very, I guess you maybe could say, cost effective if you're looking at it as a producer. But yeah, so that was sort of the big trend that we saw last year. And one other thing this actually brings up is, I don't know how many of you here are familiar with this, but every year we put out a publication. It's free to download. It's like a 330-page PDF, and it's called appropriately the spec. It is a comprehensive overview of the entire script market for that year. It goes down into probably more detail than anyone truly maybe even needs, but you could actually then start to pinpoint you can actually see all of the scripts that a specific agency went out. You can see all of the spec scripts that this management company out. What percentage of the scripts that the spec scripts they went out with were in this genre? What percentage of those got set up? So you can get very granular with that information. And that's also very helpful for writers as well, because I think it's really important if you're like, hey, you know what, I write comedies, and that's my bread and butter. That's what I do. Who out there, which reps are going out with comedy projects, right? What management companies, what agencies? And of course, it's going to be across the board, but you might start to see that there's even specific agents or specific management companies that seem to do really well in that space. And if you're trying to find representation, then that's how you can maybe sort of focus your search and try to pinpoint those companies that really sort of work well in the genre or the realm that you as a writer really gravitate to, and that's really important too. I mean, look, there's a number of writers out there. You guys are obviously in great hands working with Joey, and that's part of it, is working with people who are going to push you and challenge you to be the best that you can be. But then the other half of it is doing your due diligence, is doing your homework, and that's what the Tracking Board site is here to do, is to offer you the sort of behind the curtain look of what's actually moving behind some of these deals, so that you can be more informed, not only a more skilled writer, but now a more informed writer, and it ultimately just increases your chance of success.
Okay, awesome. Joey had to jump off, take a call. Before we go into like sort of general questions that people have, do you think we our screen and show them the website and how they can, all the different sections and functions that are on there, where they look for certain information and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So the best way to do that is if you go to the bottom of your video screen, there should be a green button that says share screen.
All right, desktop. Actually, yeah. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep, and so then you can just navigate to the Tracking Board and click around and everyone will see it.
Awesome, okay. So so I'm logged in, so I'm gonna have full ability to click on any article here. I'll make this as big as I can. Okay. So a few things. The first thing is, of course, you have your traditional film news, your TV news, and then, of course, if you want to get very specific about the type of news you want to read, you can click it here. But I really want to sort of draw our attention to the spec market section, which is what we've been talking about a lot. Now, if you just want to click on specs here, you'll see that This here is a list of all of the specs that have gone out. So as you can see, let's see, we have this one actually I believe just sold today too, Keeper of the Diary. Let's click on one, Keeper of the Diary. All right, so what you're going to find is you're going to find a log line of the project that went out. Okay, this is this seems to be regarding the Diary of Anne Frank and the sort of struggle to gain the rights and the access to it. These two right here are the writers who wrote the spec. Here's the genre. The genres that are finding. Here's where you start to find the reps, right? So the agency that took this out is Paradigm, and here are all the agents. You have the management company who rep the writers. Typically, if you see sort of two different management companies, usually you'll find that one of the writers, so the writers share the agents, but they probably each have a different manager. Or because sometimes there's unique scenarios where maybe a manager will share a client with someone. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen from time to time. You get some details about the writer. So Frank M. Kilgore, they had a big spec that went out in 2015, as you see here, Mayday 109, which made our 2015 hit list and was also on the blacklist that year. And they set up that project. And this gives you, anytime there's an update, so if you want to know if the spec script sold, this section here, the updates, is going to give you that information and a link to the actual sales listing, which can actually tell you, a lot of it is going to be the same information, but it'll tell you who the production company is and who the studio is. So you'll know, and sometimes if we don't have specific sale figures, reps may not get into specifics for obvious reasons, but they'll at least tell you what was the range, right? So this was a 6-figure sale. And there you have it. So it's very interesting to be able to sort of pinpoint that. Now I want to go back to this last page here. And so for example, let's take a look at Bellevue Productions. So now if you click any of these things, obviously, that are linked, you can click. And now this is going to give you any sort of article that has Bellevue Productions. Now Bellevue Productions is also a management company. That just happens to be their name. Actually, it's a good buddy of mine. His name's Jeff Portnoy, a really good guy. He spent time at Resolution, and before that was at CAA, and now he's doing really well as a manager. But what I was talking about before is being able to sort of go back and find material, find information, right? So Bellevue Productions, they went out with this Keeper of the Diary. They set it up. They have another spec that they went out with a little bit ago called Inauguration Day. In November, they went out with another spec called Cold Snaps. October, they went out with another spec, a couple of specs in October. So if you were to click on each of these, right, you may begin to see a trend of the type of material that this production company goes out with, right? And if you notice that the manager is the same manager, now all of a sudden you start to see, okay, this manager, Jeff, seems like he's really looking for smart, and I'm just making this up, by the way, but smart, contained sci-fi material. That's really what's going to spark to this rep. And also, if you can look at his specs and you start to see a number of sales, and let's say all of these happen to be in the same similar genre, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh man, wow. So not only does this guy go out with this material, but this manager actually is setting up these projects. So what that means is this, is that a lot of people, studios or producers, are saying they're recognizing him as somebody who's coming to him with really, again, I'm using the example of really smart, elevated, contained sci-fi. And so they're going to probably keep going to him for more of that material and ask them if they have it. If they have a need, they're probably going to say, hey, Jeff, do you have something in this space? Like, you knocked it out of the park. Your clients knocked it out of the park this last one. What do you have now? Another way to sort of look at one of these entries is, let's go to, actually, I'm going to jump over here for a second. Let's go to, Actually, no, I'll go there after. But so here is a really good example of how you can sort of not only see the type of material that's going out, but get and start to use it as a resource to become more informed about who the players are, who's representing what type of material, who's buying what type of material. Let's now take a look at another part of the spec market. So the spec market is considered spec scripts that go out. It's also film rights. Film rights are book projects. Sometimes those books could be unpublished. They could be, let's say it's very common. Someone, a publisher, will set up a book maybe 8 months before a book is even released. What they do is they have like a manuscript. It's usually pretty close to complete, a manuscript, and then they'll start sending that out to producers and studios, and they're saying, hey, this book property is going to hit the market or is on the market. Are you interested? And that's been a huge trend over the last couple of years. Is some people have even said that books are becoming like the new spec script in a way, because there is that supporting IP that's there. So now not only do you have a book franchise, a book that could become a big franchise, or that could become a very successful book and garner this sort of built-in audience, but you also now have a really cool story that could make for an amazing television show or an amazing movie. So the film rights. So under the spec market, if you wanted to look at specs, you'd go there, or you can click on film rights, and that's going to give you a listing of all of the big film rights that have hit the market. And if you were to click on each one, you're going to find very similar details as to, you'll find similar details, who the writer is, the genres, the lit agency who represents that, the publishing date, any attachments. So this one apparently has Sylvester Stallone attached to direct with Adam Driver star. And then again, updates. So now if you want to actually see the sales listing, so if this project is actually set up, you click this, and this is going to give you some more information about that. So you're going to know now who all the producers are, any additional casts or attachments that are there. So that's a really big part of the spec market. And the last sort of third kind of component is the pitches. So now a lot of times, and pitches will usually seem to be like more seasoned writers, more established writers who have sort of sold things before. But you can click on one of these, and this is going to give you some more detailed information about the pitch that's going on. And again, you can see the agency and the agents who are taking it out, any attachments that are there. So as you saw, this one has Jerry Bruckheimer attached to produce, and details if it was sold, and this one was. It was part of a preemptive deal to Paramount. Let's see, I want to now take a moment to take a look at the lists. So show of hands, who knows what the blacklist is? Okay. Hit list? Okay. Young and Hungry list? Okay. So for the most part, you all know, you're all pretty familiar with the list. Blacklist obviously is, it's been around for over a decade. Everybody knows that one really well. Hit list has been around for, I believe now, this is our 7th year. And Young and Hungry list as well. We actually curate 2 of the lists ourselves, the hit list and the Young and Hungry list. The Young and Hungry list is voted on by agents, managers, executives, and that is every year we take a look at the writers who are making sort of a splash, who executives, who managers and producers are talking about, who they're really excited about as writers. And so now as a writer, it's looking more so at their full body of work, not one single piece of material. So that's one of the big, and the Young and Hungry list is cool because lots of times there's a combination of, it usually tends to be new writers who are sort of like on the up and up. But sometimes you also get maybe a seasoned veteran who maybe, sort of was focusing on other things and now sort of like coming back into the fold. And that's a great list that we curate. every year. The next one is the hit list. Now, where the hit list and the blacklist differ is the hit list looks solely at spec scripts. The hit list is the best unproduced scripts of that year. So if Quentin Tarantino comes out with a script that people really like, it's most likely going to get made because it's a Quentin Tarantino script, but just at that time, it's just not set up. So that script would be on the blacklist. But for the hit list, that's focusing solely on spec scripts. So if a script did not go out in a traditional sense, like from an agent, from a manager, and go out and hit the town that way, then it wouldn't make it onto the hit list. So the hit list recognizes the top spec scripts is voted on by industry professionals. So again, agents, managers, and executives. Both great lists that you should be familiar with if you haven't already. And you can view the list here. So if I were to go to the hit list, it's going to bring up the hit list site. Let's look at the 2016 list. So this just came out at the end of the year. And you can download the physical PDF by clicking this here. Or if you actually want it to sort of dive deep into the list, oops, I just downloaded it, didn't even do that. Well, but that's how you would do it. You download the list here and you can actually view each of the projects that actually made that year's list. That's our good friends at ISA. And then you can find out this is the number of votes, and it tells you who it is that wrote it. And you find out all of the information in terms of the reps, the bio, and the writers, and sort of their trajectory and where they came from. You can also just search the list by clicking this link. And if you wanted to see any spec scripts that came out from CAA, you can do that. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have those scripts singled out for you here. So it's a really cool way, an interactive way to dive into the list that way. So you should all really familiarize yourself with the list. It's really cool to sort of see what some of your peers in the industry are doing and what type of projects are really getting recognized across the industry. Now let's go back here. There's a couple other great lists, by the way. There's the Blood list, which is run by Kaylee Marsh. She is primarily focused on genre, so your horror, your sci-fi, and that's another great list. And again, you can get to the list from here. The other thing I wanted to talk about is this is sort of an underutilized resource here, but there is the, sorry, where is it here? Under industry news, there's this called the executive moves. Now, have any of you here had meetings with ever had meetings with any agents or managers or met with producers? Okay, so a good chunk of everybody here. One of the things that I used to use this both as an executive, but also as a writer. And let me give you an example of what I mean, how you could use this. So, in the entertainment industry, if a producer or an executive at a production company, they may in a couple of years be moving on to a different production company. And with that move, sometimes it could be a lateral move, sometimes it could be a step up. So maybe you met with someone who's a creative executive, and then they take another job, and now they're a director of development somewhere. What's really cool about this is, so let's say, for example, let's look at, let's find a good example here. Okay, let's look at Karina Kogan, for example. So she used to be the EVP of digital at Participant Media, and now she's a senior vice president of digital media and products at TBS and TNT. Now, if let's say one of you happened to have a great meeting with her back when she was at Participant, right? Maybe your agent or your manager sent you there, or you happen to get a meeting there, and you got the gist of what type of content Participant Media was doing. You got to maybe understand the tastes and the sensibilities of Karina, but she moves now to another company. if you have a good rapport with that person, and let's say you guys have exchanged emails, right, and they've read your material and they were fans, and for maybe whatever reason your project wasn't a right fit at the time, but they still really liked your material, and there's an open door for you there. Well, if you see that they've gone out to another company and you have that sort of open door, you should absolutely reach out to them. And of course, if you're rep, you always want to first consult your rep, because your rep can maybe do this for you, right? But if you don't have a rep and these people have sort of done this and they move to another company, why not reach out to them? Because now, first of all, they're a new company. They might have a different sort of mandate of what type of material they're looking for, right? I would do this all the time as an executive. If I saw someone that, a former colleague that I knew was at, let's say, Bold Films, and then they went over to go to another company, I would follow up with them and afterward and say, hey, congratulations on the new job. What kind of stuff are you guys looking for? So now you're up to speed. You're in the know of what this outlet is looking for, right? So, because again, the idea is always to stay ahead of the curve or stay up to speed with things. And in an ever-changing landscape, that just means that you need to be on top of it and doing your homework. So this, I personally think, is sort of an underutilized tool. And look, some days you might look at this and you may not recognize any names, and that's okay. But you might recognize a couple of people that you've taken meetings with. Now all of a sudden they're somewhere else, and now it's an opportunity for you to potentially get your material read at another company, right? Or ultimately get your material set up somewhere. So I think that's a really cool sort of underutilized resource here, which is the Executive Shuffle, and that's located under Industry News. So we have the spec market, which breaks down the specs, the film rights. The heat meter is just anytime a spec is out on the market and there's updates. So for example, the spec that went out on Friday, Inauguration Day, there's apparently a lot going on with it today. So let's take a look at this. So this is just this is talking about a little bit more in depth about what the script is about. And here you go. Here is all of the territories via producers that this is into. So these are all the people that, based on this log line and who these writers are taking a look at the script. So now we were talking about Screen Gems as an example before. Let's click on Screen Gems. So obviously this is a script that they're reading right now. Okay. So now if you wanted to click on that Screen Gems, now you're going to see all of the material that sales means that is something that they sold. So, okay, they bought a script called Proud Mary, Slender Man. If you were to click on these, you'd know the genre, the log lines, you get a better sense again of the material they're looking for. Even these other projects that maybe haven't sold, like, let's see, it looks like they went out with this, that was a pitch book, Canary Black. You start to get in a really strong sense of who these companies are and the type of material that not only people, again, are coming to them for, they think that they can set up, but the stuff that really moves the needle at these companies. Knowing that information helps you if you're writing a specific type of project. If you see that you wrote something that's similar to the Slender Man in tone, then hey, maybe Sony Screen Gems is the right place and that should be reading your material. So that's sort of just like there's a lot here. As you can see, TV news, you can break it down if you wanted to know some casting notes, like who's gotten signed to certain projects, what shows are getting picked up, TV deals. Let's say someone signs a overall deal with a studio and with the network that's there. One other thing is our feature section. Now these are feature articles that we write. So only the exclusives, those are all our exclusive news stories that we broke exclusively first. So you can find that there. And then the network series and the studio series are, they're really well done opinion pieces by a writer, one of our contributors named Neil Turitz. And reading these is really interesting. Now, of course, there's going to be some of his sort of personal opinion based in here. But what he does is, so for example, looking at the network series, he goes down over the course of the year, he's been breaking down each network, right? What they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and sort of like the outlook, right? Was 2015 a good year for them? And if it was, why? If it wasn't, how come? So that's really interesting, and I think understanding, again, the environment and who you are potentially writing for, who is going to potentially be purchasing your script or your pilot, this is really valuable information. And so there's the network series, and then there's the studio series, and that does the same thing. So, that'll take a look at Netflix, that'll look at your Universals, your Fox. It'll sort of, again, just makes you more informed. You have a really good understanding of the entire industry top down. And that's, you sort of can't really put a price on that. Part of this is, part of it, again, like I was saying, is your skill and your dedication to your craft as a writer. But the other part is informing yourself, empowering yourself with knowledge, and putting those things together. You guys are just going to be unstoppable. You're going to be beasts. And on top of that, again, like I was saying, roadmap writers, the opportunity to, the access to be able to pitch executives who are, roadmap, you could pitch people like, they had like Sean Robbins, who is like a top dog at Broken Road. Like, the access is great. And then more importantly, though, is having a trusted resource and someone that you can talk to and work with to make your material better. That's a really important thing. So there you have it. There's another, and again, those are under the feature sections, the network series, studio series, and so on. But Dorian, I'll turn it back over to you.
I would say the last thing before you stop sharing your screen, if you just want to go over the forums for them and what they can find in there, and then we can stop sharing your screen and go to all their questions.
Cool. You guys want to see my pretty picture in the background? Does anybody care? Here, I'll show it to you anyway. I love city skylines and cityscapes. Love it. All right, there you have it. Let's go to the forums. Forums is great. Now, this is part of a member of the tracking board. You get access to the forums. When you sign into the forums, this is the community aspect of it, right? On the tracking board site, you really can't interact with anyone. It's you and the database and everything there. For here, this is also connected to part of sort of the more traditional tracking board Google group, which is you're part of a email group where you can ask and search for material, right? Let's say you are writing a piece of material that's similar to, let's say it's a noir 70s kind of piece, right, with comedic elements, and you're like, okay, the nice guys. I wonder what Shane Black's script read like. You can go onto the forums and you can actually do what they call an ISO, which is in search of, and you can ask the community and say, hey, does anybody happen to have the script? And if they do, they'll email it to you. And so, and not to mention, by the way, there is a ton of material that is just in here already. So as you saw, I went to the specs of 2011, 2016. Let's go to 2015. So here it gives a breakdown of, there was 161 specs that were posted in here at the time, and 102 of them. So here you go. Read and need. Needs means it's not there. Read is there. So let's say as you're scrolling through, Alan Quartermain. Oh wait, no, I don't have that. American Drifter. You wanted to read the script. You click read, and the script just downloaded. And now I can read the script, and I can sort of, this was a script that went out from UTA and Management 360. You can read a script, and one of the ways to continue to improve your skill and your craft is to read material that's really great, that's top notch, and see and learn from the best. Learn what some of these really amazing writers are doing. See little nuances that they do with their characters and things like that, and that's how you can learn. And so from here, there's a ton of information that you can access and that you can read. Bedrest is a script that's sold, so that's something that you can download and read. That was 2015. I mean, this can go down to 2011. A lot of these here looks like, since these were 2016, people are still requesting, but 8 Balloons is a project that was written by Marshall Lewis Ryan, and I believe Netflix ended up buying this project. So again, great example of how you can read a wealth of material. I mean, these lists go on and on. Also, again, the ISO element of it, if you were part of the Google group, which I don't have up to demonstrate, but that's something where you could say, hey, community, looking for this script, If you have it, great. And if they have it, sometimes you'll get it within minutes, or somebody will hit you up within a few hours or a day if they have it. So again, an amazing resource here, and it's not just features, by the way, for all of you who also are writing pilots right now in the TV space. Let's take a look at 2014, 2015. So this is a full list of the 2014, 2015 television pilot list. So these are all the projects that the studios had purchased. Maybe not all of these got made, but some of them, Dr. Ken, if you wanted to read the pilot for Dr. Ken, there you have it. I mean, and you can view that. You can view that here. So a really great resource, and this is pretty awesome. Like, I wish that when I was starting out as a writer, I had sort of quick access to this kind of stuff. There were a few things out at the time, but there's others who've sort of dedicated their business to this, and this is one of the things that we've done. So this is great, and it's sort of community based, which I love too. It's you guys interacting with each other, and we also have another section where you can upload part of your script, and if you want to sort of open it up there for feedback, you can do that as well, and you can ask people to sort of weigh in to read your pages and get some thoughts on there. That's something else that you can utilize that for as well. So this is the forum section.
Okay, cool. So you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen. There should be an option at the top. There we go. So let's go into some questions. Let's start with Judith, because this kind of relates to what all the stuff you're just talking about when you were demonstrating the site. If you were a writer looking in, how would you use Tracking Board?
Almost to understand is interested in the type of things that you're passionate about writing. I think it's really important to do that, because let's say, for example, you make a list, right? You make a list of these managers at these specific management companies really seem to go out with material that is there to in tone to what I write. So now let's say there's a pitch opportunity, right? An opportunity to pitch this person, let's say through Romantic Writers, or let's say you go to an event and they happen to be there or something like that. Now not only the type of material that you could really get their attention with. Some places actually still accept open submissions as well. Not all places, some places don't accept sort of queries, but there are still some management companies out there that will accept them. So now okay, look, these people might speak to this material, so let me go ahead and let me send them this. This seems like this is right up their alley. And that's something that you can do. That's one way that you can do that.
Michael, you are sharing your screen on accident, so go up to the top where it says stop screen share. There we go. Cool. All right, cool. So let's roll through some other questions. Rick asked, is Thriller popular for TV too?
That's a really great question. You actually bring a really good point. Our spec market really takes a look at the feature spec market. For TV, I think Thriller is, this is just sort of more my opinion, but I think having that sort of element in it is something that always drives the story. I would say, like a show like Designated Survivor, which is something I'm really enjoying right now, is a political thriller, right? There's that engine that's sort of constantly propelling the story forward. There's the mysteries continuing to develop and unfold. I think that an element of that always goes a long way. But in the TV space, I would try to look at the pilots that are getting set up. Look at the trades, look at the news headlines, and see, hey, ABC just bought this project, NBC bought this project, and if they have that sort of element, then yeah, I'd say that's probably the case. And if you look at the landscape right now, I think that especially the broadcast networks, there tends to be sort of there's several projects that have that sort of really strong thriller aspect to it.
Cool. And Cass asked, how's the market for limited series?
It seems like it's actually been on the up and up. Especially now as you have, right, there's Taboo, which is the Tom Hardy limited series on FX. You have the limited series that's coming out on HBO with Reese Witherspoon and Shailene Woodley. I think what's really unique about the limited series is it is allowing for really strong material that, there might be a little bit more there than a feature, but not enough to sort of stain for an extended series. You have sort of now a forum to do that. Look at like The People versus OJ. That's going to be part of an anthology series, but still it's considered, like a limited series. And you can also bring in amazing cast, which is, you can bring in these amazing, and both on and off the camera, like it's, top writers, directors, and then as well as the talent. Like you can get a Nicole Kidman for a limited series. Like at least, a few years ago, thought of getting one of them for television was like non-existent. And now you have the best and the brightest working in that space in the limited series. For some people also, for some networks, they will also look at a limited series. There's a term that they use sometimes as like a backdoor pilot. So they will, and again, this does not speak for all limited series, but for some limited series, it could operate as a sort of backdoor pilot, where if this thing is really popular and there could be a larger story that could continue on, that a network can say, okay, you know what, let's explore this further. The Lifetime used to do this with movies. They would do it with, I believe, what was the one? It was a show with, I can't remember, but essentially it started out as an MOW, movie of the week, and from there it turned into a backdoor pilot. They left it sort of open-ended so that it could potentially continue on, and that's what it did.
Well, somebody also mentioned The Young Pope. You never would have thought you would see Jude Law on TV.
Absolutely.
Arthi asked, are there any big budget screenplays by new writers that you see gaining sales or traction, or how often do you see that happening?
I think we definitely see that trend happening continually every year. It's a smaller percentage, but it still happens. One of the trends that we saw in 2015, and I think is going to continue for the next few years, is writers who have a spec, but then also have, let's say if you're a writer-director, right, we're seeing a lot of people who are doing, selling like shorts, like proof of concepts, but specifically in like the sci-fi sort of like or genre space, and it's people who are really sort of either work with people who are really gifted in the VFX space, or they themselves are very skilled in the VFX world. And I think showcasing someone who can work with VFX, I mean, if you look at a lot of the studio movies that are coming out, is like they're so VFX driven, right? So that's why I think you're starting to even see filmmakers who have fewer maybe movies under their belt are now sort of, a great example is Colin Trevorrow, right? Like he went from Safety Not Guaranteed, which I love, which is this great, sort of indie kind of mumblecore movie. Now I'm sure he had one hell of a take on Jurassic World, but that's a huge leap. You're seeing this more and more. It's people who sort of can work in that sort of space. I think that's sort of a trend that we've been seeing in 2015. I think it's probably going to continue on for the next year or so.
All right, cool. Sharon asks, question on TV. Have we reached peak TV, or is there still room for 30-minute comedies / dramedies? And related to that, Julianne also asked, what's hot in TV?
That's a question a lot of people are asking. People are like, is the TV bubble going to pop? Is it going to pop? I don't know. I mean, right now, what is it? I think there are going to be, I just read the stat, and I don't know if forgive me if I'm not remembering it correctly, but I think that there's going to be like 480 some new series that are coming out this year. I think 60 of those shows are going to be from Netflix alone, which is pretty crazy. So as more and more sort of people, and there's been talks and rumors that Apple is getting ready to make a big jump into scripted content as well. And then you have these other sort of platforms. You have places like Vimeo, who they had that show High Maintenance, which then ended up going to HBO. As more and more sort of platforms are happening in sort of the digital sort of space as well, those are other opportunities for. There's places like what's that? I can't think of it. Freeform. All that to say, I don't think we're there yet. I think that it's really there's a lot of opportunities out there. There's a lot of opportunities out there because there are some more places, more sort of outlets that are still popping up and that are still hungry and looking for content. I think the challenge is on the larger level, on the more established sort of networks. They're probably going to be looking first and foremost to to establish sort of creators like your J.J. Abrams, and that's sort of what HBO works with some of the. And by the way, this isn't no means like the exception to there's always people who are able to kind of come up with other networks like Netflix, right? Netflix works with everybody. I mean, they put Duffer Brothers. The Duffer Brothers were sort of not really known. They were not known, but they had an amazing pitch deck, and they had done I believe it was like an indie film, and they just had a great pitch, and now they have a wildly successful show on their hands. So I think there's always going to be room for amazing material, and amazing material will always find its way to the top, regardless if you are this is your first thing you've ever written, or if you've been writing for 10 years. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Janice asked, I've been fortunate enough to have had 3 comedy spec scripts go out wide over the past few years and posted on the tracking board. One of the scripts itself was made available anonymously in the tracking board forums. When that happens, is there any way to request to have a script taken down? Oh no, he's frozen. You tricked him up, Janice. Jorge? Are you there? And I can't even do anything because I'm not even the host. Joey's the host. I'm a participant just like you guys right now. I'm not controlling anything.
Where did Joey go? I guess is his computer still running it?
Yeah, his computer's still running it, and it's the one recording it.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, Jorge just dropped off. Okay, cool. So hopefully he'll click the link again and come back on. Janice, what a fucked up question, Janice. Jesus Christ. Oh, you're back. Oh, wait, you're muted. Jorge, unmute yourself. It's at the bottom right. There you go.
There we go. Oh. No, I was joking. I said, Jess, you took down the whole network. I love it. Wait, I'm sorry. So what was the question there? I apologize.
Janice, you can go ahead and tell him.
Okay. All right, Jorge. If only I was actually that powerful in Hollywood as I am on Zoom. So I was fortunate enough to have 3 comedy specs sent out wide by reps over the last few years, onto the tracking board. It was very exciting. Nothing big happened. So actually I have 2 questions. One is one of my scripts got posted on the forum.
Okay.
And when that happens, it's a great tool for writers to read that, but if you want it taken down, is there any way to get it taken down? And also all the heat meter stuff, is that done by one's rep? To your first question, you can write into us. You have something up there and you want it to come down, you can just write into us, and we'll work it out. As far as the heat meter stuff, the reps, yes, the reps give us that information. So a great example is like David. There's an agent, David Boxerbaum at Paradigm, who him and Tracking Board are very close, and so whenever he goes out with the spec, he lets us know. He's emailing us and texting us updates as it happens. So yes, we're getting those updates as they are getting them as well. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, cool. Laura, are independent companies covered at all, or is this mainly studios and studio independents like Focus or Paramount Spotlight?
It's a little bit of everything. You're going to actually see when you're looking at the spec market. If the spec was acquired by a smaller independent company, then yeah, it's going to be listed on there. We try to track every spec that's gone out. So even if it's from a boutique management production company, or if it's from a well-established sort of one of the big four or something like that, then we're going to track that. That's the other thing is that's why you'll find that our spec list that we have is more in depth than anybody else does. So we do, and just the nature of if those projects are getting set up at those independents. If it's happening, we're tracking it.
Cool. Shannon asked, where do you see the market going over the next 5 years?
A lot of people have been saying the spec script market is some already say it's dead, some say it's dying. There's still a lot of material that's out there. Like I said, 375 specs went out last year. I think a few years ago, I think it was maybe 450. I think it's probably going to it's still going to be around. I think it's still going to be around. But what we're seeing is that unless there's always exceptions to the rule, but what we didn't see last year is we didn't see any of these giant, there was a couple of big 6-figure deals, but there was not a single $1 million. I think that sort of heyday is kind of past us. It's not to say that something might not come and really drive up a bidding war or something like that. I still think the spec market is going to be there. I still think it's a great way for make a name for themselves. And you have to remember too that selling spec is really, really hard to do. But if you write an amazing spec and you're able to catch the attention of reps, that's going to help you because then you're going to get meetings. And in those meetings, you're going to have executives pitching you ideas. You're going to have their attention. And so now it's your job as a writer to write another amazing script. If, let's say, you don't find a producer to sort of work on a project with, whether it's the spec that you're meeting about or an idea that they maybe have and they're pitching you, they're going to remember your name now. They're going to read, and if you made an impression with that piece of material, now when you go back to them, they're going to be like, oh yeah, Janice wrote that awesome, hilarious comedy spec. Yeah, I'm going to read, like, you're connecting the dots there, and it just makes it sort of easier and easier. You're just chipping away at that. I hope that sort of answered the question.
Yeah, and I'll even say that, like, when I worked at Apex, there was a who had written a great spec, like a very indie spec, kind of in the vein of like Elephant, and that got her a rep, and we read her spec, and then they ended up getting her to write something that they wanted to develop on. We had to write it on spec for them, right. So for free, unless they were going to make it. Right. But she had a writing assignment from it. Which I guess this ties into that. Rudy asked, can you go into the details about part of the forum?
Yeah, open writing assignment is anytime sort of say studio has a project that they are looking to, let's say they optioned a book and maybe they even attached a director, but they're looking for a writer for that. That's one example of the open writing assignment, meaning that a studio is actively seeking for a writer to adapt that piece of material, to write that project. Sometimes it could be a rewrite. Sometimes it could be a project that's been in development somewhere for a while, and maybe a few people have taken a stab at it, and you know what, it just really wasn't jiving with sort of for it, and so now there's an open writing assignment. They're hiring someone to pen that next draft. Open writing assignments, if let's say I personally think if you have a rep and you happen to see that there's an open writing assignment and you think you might, like, that's something that you can actually nail. Let's say you come up with a really great pitch and take, and your rep can then say, okay, yeah, what's your pitch, what's your take? Let's work on it. Let's talk about it. And again, I mean, this is part of the collaborative, having an agent manager is like a relationship, right? You have to sort of nurture the relationship, and it has to be sort of mutually beneficial. And then from there, you're like, okay, great. And then, if they could put you up for it, they can call that executive and say, hey, Rudy's got a great take on, I know you guys are looking for a writer on I'll just say Independence Day 3. I don't know if that's really happening or not, but Independence Day 3, he's got a hell of a take on it. I know you guys are looking for somebody to write that. Maybe they'll send over a one-page or like something like that. And if they like this, you're, oh shit, this is pretty good. Hey, yeah, let's have them come in. It's sort of your take on there. And that's one way of utilizing the open writing assignment section.
Cool. Now here's where you earn your keep, Jorge, and make your boss proud. Sebastian asks, what's the main difference in terms of information between Tracking Board and Studio System or Variety Insight?
Great question. The spec market is something, again, that we sort of track better than, and we really pride ourselves on keeping our data as up to speed. Without going into too much detail, this year the Tracking Board is going to get a very exciting, we'll call it a facelift. And with that is going to be an incredible way to interact with our database more specifically, similar to how maybe you would do it on a IMDb Pro or on a studio system, but doing everything that you wish both of those things could do in one roof. The other thing is, by the way, is by the way, those are great resources. Both of those sites are great resources. Some of them, their data may not be as up to speed as others. Both great resources. One of the things too is also the price point that we offer is $50 a month. You can be a member of the Tracking Board. Some of those other sites, Studio System specifically, is pretty substantial in terms of getting access to that.
All right, cool.
Hope that answers your question, Sebastian.
I would also say that Studio System costs $2,600 a year. So there's that. Let's see. Judith asked, is there budget information or sale or option price info on Tracking Board?
There's not that much of that, no. In terms of if a rep happens to give us price of a spec sale, we'll have it in there. If, we find out from the reps that it's going to be made for a specific budget, we'll include that in there, but it's not something that, truthfully, sometimes I find that it's information that is not widely distributed. It's given. You'll usually will find after a film is made, or sometimes during into the pre-production process. But it's not something that we track, in extreme detail.
Lori asked, genre seems timeless. Just as soon as horror is declared dead, something comes up that revives it, such as It Follows. Are there specific genres that never seem to dip in spec popularity?
Thriller's one of them. I mean, that one has sort of withstood the test of time over the last several years. Here's the thing: is there's sort of kind of different schools of thought, and one of those is that when you're writing something, you need to also be careful to not chase a trend. So you want to be aware of what is selling, and if you have something and you're you're close to finishing it, that's great. But if you're maybe just starting on something, it's possible that by the time you're ready to go, that the new shiny toy is dangling over there, and everybody is shifting over there. It's really you all are aware of this, but there's like that sort of copycat sort of syndrome. Hits with one specific type of movie, then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh man, and where's our version of that? And that happens a lot. And so if there is that sort of, if one person sort of hits something, then I think that there's definitely a window of opportunity to sort of like capitalize on that. But if something has sort of been around for like a long period of time, you just want to be very cautious about trying to chase that, because by the time you get there, they may be out to something else. Again, you still could have a great sample on your hands, which is great, and can still help maybe create other opportunities. Something to sort of be cognizant of.
Cool. Mary asked, very hard to get traction as a new writer with a period feature film. Would it be easier to sell a period pilot in your experience from what you've seen going on?
I feel like the chances are probably about the same. You are correct. It's period pieces tend to be more challenging, but we're seeing shows break through that sort of that stereotype. A great way to sort of get exposure sometimes to those things is also through writing competitions and things like that. Things that sort of can further that material, because now it's like not only, all right, so sure, maybe you wrote a period drama, but it's an amazing thing. It's gotten recognition and tons of accolades now, and I think it'd be more likely for then someone to maybe pay attention to it.
Cool. And then Sebastian had sent a follow-up saying, in other words, is it worth me renewing my studio system? What I would say is that studio system and tracking board are very different tools. Studio set up in different ways with different interfaces. It depends on what sort of information that you're looking for. If you can afford a studio system subscription, I say go. It's laid out in a much different way. And so finding the information that you want on studio system and finding the information that you want on tracking board, it's a different interface. And I would say that there's often a lot of different information between studio system and tracking board in the way that it's presented. So it's really what value you see coming out of studio system. And Jorge, how much is tracking board?
It's $79 for a year membership.
Yeah, $79 a year. So it's worth, if you're paying $2,600 a year for studio system, maybe check out tracking board and see if it has what you need. And you can find the information that you're looking for and that you found on studio system in the same way, and then, go from there. But like I said, it's like they're all different tools. When I was working in the producing side, like we used tracking board, we used studio system, MDB Pro. They're all different things laid out in different ways that bring different information out in a different format. So it's really just about, how you're utilizing it. Right, Jorge?
I was going to say, you couldn't have said it better. Absolutely.
So tell your bosses that they can write. No. Let's see. Ross asked, tracking board for USA specs, but are there any sites, or does tracking board follow television/feature scripts that were written and or sold in countries like China or to Chinese companies?
Wait, so can you repeat that one more time? You sort of cut out for a second.
Oh, he's asking about, it's great for USA specs, but does tracking board, or are there other sites that track television and feature scripts that were written and or sold in other countries, particularly like China, or sold to Chinese companies?
Great question. I honestly, I don't know. I'm not aware of a site out there that does that at the moment. I think we sort of, the things that we will track, of course, if it's a foreign, let's say, like, for example, when Homeland got set up, right, that was an Israeli format show that was brought over here. If it's like an international format that's being made over here, then that's something that we track. BBC, those sort of like UK track. But, beyond that, no. It's really, like you said, it's mainly focused on the US. Great question, though.
All right, cool. I'm not sure if I missed any questions or if anybody else has questions. If you have questions, I'm not going to see it if you use raise hand function, because I am a participant just like you. I don't see raised hands. But you can always wave, and then I'll see it. Anybody have any other questions? Or you can also unmute yourself and break in.
I'm just looking now as Joey. There's no raised hands right now. I just want to say too, with Tracking Board, by getting a membership, by entering the contest, Roadmap literally gets nothing out of it. We promote Tracking Board because we think it's such an important resource for every screenwriter to use. We're huge supporters of Jorge and his group. And I think, like Dorian was saying, that this webinar is awesome. So does anybody have any last questions for Jorge?
I think Sarita was asking if they have to get their reps to send scripts in, or do individual writers do it themselves?
In regards to specs? Wait, can I read the questions coming in?
She says yes.
Oh, in regards to specs. Yeah, typically it's specs that are going out wide. So they're going out, they're out from reps, yes, agents or managers. Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
Launchpad? Yeah, the Launchpad is our, I just realized now that I can see all, guys, I'm late to the game here. I see all
Well, no, you don't want to be distracted by it, though. That's why I was reading them all.
No, well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Dorian. Yeah, the Launchpad is sort of our sibling site. Launchpad is our screenwriting competitions. We're now entering our 4th year of doing those. We run a feature competition, a pilot competition is open currently. What sets us apart from everyone else is, like I was saying before, in just under 4 years, we've helped over 160 writers get signed. Over 56 projects have been set up at production companies. 21 writers have now gotten staffed on TV shows. Every competition that we have a judging panel of 25. So that's we have agents, we have managers, we have executives, and we've really, a lot of it is, from some these are relationships that I've had with people from my past that some of my colleagues have had, and so they really sort of immediately recognize the Tracking Board as being a place that is able to curate really exceptional writers, both in the feature space and in the space. And we actually just last year we launched our first manuscript competition. And the other thing that we sort of do is we make it a point to partner with different companies. So on our manuscript competition, for example, we partnered with Scott Free Productions, which is Ridley Scott's production company, where they would guarantee to option at least one project from the competition. And they ended up actually optioning 2, which was really awesome. So for us, we've had some amazing success stories. Eric Koenig, his feature spec that he didn't even win the competition. Actually, I think he was at the top. He finished in the top 10, but he got signed. He got an agent and manager from the competition, and they went out with his spec on. He sold it the next day, and he was the Army, and he was a dentist in the Army, and now he's a writer, which paid professional writer. He sold his script to Paramount. So for us, it's really about leveraging the relationships that we have with all the people in the industry. Because for a long time there were a lot of competitions that were kind of bubbling up. And they were just like, hey, we'll put your name on a list on a website, and we'll call it a day. And for some people that seemed like that was sort of enough, but for us, it's really about having that relationship and giving the script the exposure to the entertainment industry professionals that can actually do something to further your career. And that's really what we pride ourselves in. And it's one of the most exciting parts of the Launchpad, and the fact that we've had a number of success stories is just further gets agents and managers excited to participate and be a part of it, because they're eager to find the next great voice and the next great piece of material. So I hope that answered the sort of Launchpad question there.
Well, Betty also asked, can entertainment attorneys post scripts to Tracking Board?
I believe we've had some in the past. It's a little bit more rare, but I'd have to go back and look. I do know that we have had some attorneys that have posted, but I can sort of follow up a little further with that.
Cool. And Rick asked, is there any market for mid to low budget character-driven dramedy sort of scripts?
I think so. I think there's always an appetite for really strong characters. I think especially when we have there's increasingly more distributors like A24 distributes really interesting material, right? They are sort of very, very character driven. Places like STX and like Broad Green, those seem like companies that are really sort of like looking for character driven stuff. So I think so. I think coupled with that, it's really sort of also finding a really like a cool high concept idea as well. If you're able to sort of like pair the two, I think you're in really good shape.
All right, cool. Any last questions from anybody for Jorge? Everybody pretty good? Jorge, boxers or briefs?
Secret.
Okay, cool. So if there's nothing else, thank you, Jorge, so much for doing this. I can't end the meeting, so Joey's there.
We're here forever.
Oh, awesome. And then also, Joey, if I just want to let you know, if you're able to do you have a way to know everybody who's on today? If I was going to say what I'd like is Joey's to just for anybody who's never had a membership to the tracking board is Joey, if you can randomly sort of draw from who was here today, but I'd like to extend entry one of your memberships to somebody that was on here. So Joey, I'll let Joey and I will talk, but Joey will do a little he'll do a little raffle, and we'll let I guess we can maybe let it or something who the 3 recipients are. Okay.
I love it. Somebody suggested mud wrestling.
I just saw that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jorge, thank you so much. This was incredible.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you all spending a couple of your evening hours with me. So thanks so much, guys.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, have a great night. Bye. See ya.
Bye, guys.